Hey guys, it's SD, your host of the Life Picks Relationship podcast, where people with all sorts of backgrounds, challenges, and life experience show us how they make their relationship extraordinary. Hey guys, hope you're having an awesome day and are working to make sure that your marriage doesn't have the big, huge problem that so many people have in their relationship. In the previous episode, Rabbi Manis Friedman told us what that biggest problem was and how we can go and solve it. Now, for today's episode, I'm really excited. I got so much feedback when we did the Myers-Briggs episodes in episode 53 and 54 on understanding your personality type and your partner's personality type and temperament and what you could do to understand each other better. And so I thought it would be a good idea to do a different type of personality typing because maybe you'll get a different understanding that you haven't thought of before and you'll understand yourself on a deeper level and your partner on a deeper level. So today we have with us coach, writer, and speaker Jenn Whitmer on the Enneagram. So tell me, Jenn, why do you like the Enneagram method so much?
Most of the time, there are deeper motivations involved. I mean, I always like to say it's rarely about who left the toaster on the counter. Like, it's never about what you're talking about. It's almost always deeper issues within yourself. And so the Enneagram is the best tool that I've found. I've used StrengthsFinders and Myers-Briggs, but it is the best tool that I found to really get deep at the issue that then allows you to really see substantive changes.
Okay, so you want to tell us what makes it so amazing?
Absolutely. So for those of you who are listening and you're like, what is that word she's saying? You're like, Ennea what? So the Enneagram is a personality framework. So it's a tool that helps us understand the deep motivations of who we are and how we see the world. And the framework allows for lots of growth and change throughout the day and throughout our lives. And it uses numbers to describe the different personality types. So there are 9 numbers. And one of the reasons I actually really love that is because some numbers don't necessarily identify with the words that go with that. Like that word has a different connotation for them or in a different culture. And I really love that it's actually just numbers. It also makes it really easy to remember. Because, like when people who have done their Myers-Briggs, they're like, I'm like an E-T, there's like all those letters. And so it's just like, oh, I'm a 1, I'm a 6. And so I think I like that a lot, that it helps us identify more about who we are and gets to the root of the tool rather than kind of focusing on the tool itself. It becomes useful.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go through the 9 types in general. So
absolutely.
In a way that people listening could figure out what type they are.
Oh, see, okay. So before we start going through the types, it sometimes takes a while to understand your type. So I'm not a huge fan of tests because the Enneagram.
1 second. Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, I have that tendency to do that. I'm just saying. I found that a lot of Enneagram teachers don't like the tests. Why is that?
So it's because it's really easy in a test to focus on your behavior. And the Enneagram is not about what you do. It's about why you do it. So I like to use the example of a clean desk. So some people really like a clean desk. Like that's a really important thing for them. Oh, you do? So why do you like a clean desk? What's the why?
Because I need things empty and clear and just not things out there. Just
not
like clean.
Out there. Clean. Why do you like it clean?
And then my brain could think and then it looks nicer.
Okay. So we could go deeper into those whys. I like my desk to be clean so I don't feel trapped. Like if there's too much stuff, I feel very trapped, which is very much my personality type. I have a good friend she likes her desk clean because that's the right thing to do. Tests really kind of look at the behaviors, and until you've done a little bit of self-awareness work and understand your motivations, they're not always as accurate. Some people, they take it and it's like, oh my gosh, that's totally me. And other people are like, I mean, I guess that's me. And then they give up on the tool because it doesn't totally identify with them. Yeah. So I think that the tests can be informative, but not the deciding factor. Does that answer your question?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I like that. Okay. So back to what you were saying.
That's okay. Totally great question. So when we go through the types, oftentimes it takes a little bit of time. And so when I was learning my Enneagram type, I thought that I knew, and then I really kind of tried it on for 4, 5, 6 months and listened to lots of people talk about their numbers. And then I really was like, this is totally me. Now I was right from the beginning, but I was much more secure in totally understanding it later. So just know that going in, that this isn't like we always want it easy. Like, just like, oh, tell me who I am. And really one of the benefits of the tool is doing the work to figure out who you are. And then you're like down the road of the progress of self-awareness. So I'm going to go through the types. And before I go through all the types, I'm going to describe what the motivations are. So, because each type we're going to say, here's this motivation and here's what this type is like. So just so you understand the motivations, we're going to talk about the personality strategies. So our personalities are trying to do something. It's trying to help us get our needs met. And so everyone has a strategy and everyone has a core fear. It's this thing that they are always afraid of deep, deep down. Everybody has a core desire, the thing that they are going for, what they want, what they're always looking for. Every type has a core weakness, which is this thing you're just always kind of rubbing up against. It's like, oh, why do I keep doing this? Like, why is this the thing? And then a message that you're really wanting to hear. Like, oh, if I could just hear this and really believe it, I would have peace in my soul. Those are the deep personality work that we're talking about. So, and you'll probably recognize yourself in lots of them because you're like, well, oh, everybody wants to not feel rejected. Everybody wants to feel safe, but there's one that really hits home. And so usually as somebody's listening, if you hear one that you're like, oh, I don't like that I don't like, it makes you a little uncomfortable because it could be you, that's the one to lean into. And there's some of them you're going to be like, oh, that's not me. And that's fine. Knock it out. Right. And so that's totally normal. So I like to start, like I said, there's 9 types. So if you're listening to this podcast, I want you to imagine a circle. Even if you want to put your hands together like a circle and think about a clock. And the 9 is at the top of the clock where 12 might be, but there's only 9 numbers. And I'm going to start just to the left of 9 at 8. And I like to start with the 8s for lots of different reasons, but mostly because they are the most powerful numbers on the Enneagram. And sometimes they don't like to wait. And so this just, I love them.
You're feeding them.
I'm feeding them. I love them. So I'm going to start with the 8s. And the 8 strategy is really about protection. They are always trying to protect themselves and their people. It's not just protecting themselves. They're like, I got my people. And they're really protecting them. And they really fear being vulnerable or powerless or weak or manipulated. Those are big fears for 8. And they're always trying, like I said, their core desire is really to protect people. They're very justice oriented. They look out for the underdog. They're always trying to protect in that way. And their core weakness is often excess and like this intense excess. And they're looking for intensity. 8s make their way in the world. They are acting on the world at all times. And so they are almost forcing themselves on life so they are not controlled. So they're a very intense number. They are so caring on the inside in that little vulnerable place that they don't like to let lots of people see. And so what they always want to hear is that they're not going to be betrayed and that they will be protected. So they're going after that for other people, and that's what they want. So that's the 8. And then we're going to move, so back on the clock, whoop, we're back to the top, and it's the peacemaker. And the peacemaker strategy is really withdrawal. So they're kind of the opposite of 8s in some ways, where they're pulling back because their core fear is conflict, tension, loss of connection. They just want to keep peace at all times. And they don't want to be overlooked, but they also don't want to make themselves heard. Peace on the inside and peace on the outside is really important to 9s. And so their core desire is this internal harmony and internal stability and internal peace. And they want that. To get that, they want to make sure the rest of the world is also peaceful and stable in that way. But their strategy to get there is just to come into themselves. And so their core weakness, I don't love this word. I want to come up with a better one, but ancient Enneagram wisdom, people smarter than me have done this for hundreds of years, is sloth. And it's not lazy. It's more like this internal, I don't have the energy. I'm just going to pull inside myself. And so they're always wanting to keep the peace and be easygoing. Well, if you think that, okay, I can think that. Or I guess that's how you feel. That's how I'll feel. There's a lot of merging in there. They deal with that anger by like falling asleep to it. Like, I'm just not angry. So sometimes a 9 will just be unsure of their own worth and their own feelings and all of that. And then they finally have had it and they have a moment of anger. whatever. So it seems so out of character.
People that like bottle up their emotions and then it explodes. I mean, obviously other numbers could do that also, but
totally. And 9s are more likely to do that with anger. They're not necessarily going to do that with other emotions, although 9s do have a tendency not to process emotions well until they learn how, because that feels like lack of peace. If I have to process a negative emotion, that means I'm not having peace. And that's why it's hard for them. So what they really want to hear is that their presence matters. Like your thoughts, your decisions, your point of view really does matter. And that's the struggle that they have. So if we now move from the 9 in the 1 spot, we have the perfectionist, and they are always trying to perfect things. That's their personality strategy. Lots of people deal with perfectionism. Like I said, lots of people deal with excess. Lots of people want to feel their presence matters. But for the 1, perfectionism is the main strategy that they're using all the time to run away from their core fear of being inappropriate or unredeemable or wrong or bad. Those words are just terrifying to 1s. They don't want to be corrupted or lack integrity. And so, because they're always wanting to be virtuous and right and accurate and good. And that is where they're always going. So they're the reformers in lots of ways. They insert themselves into situations and they want things to be perfect, not because they need control, but because they want things to be good. And so it's slightly different than 8s. 8s can sometimes be perfectionists, but they're really going after control and not wanting to be vulnerable. So like if I can control the scene, versus 1s who are dealing with this anger that kind of becomes resentment. They repress their anger because they think it's bad, not because they don't want internal peace, but if I'm angry, then that's wrong. And so they're always kind of in this state of frustration and perfecting themselves and others in the world. And they have often an internal critic that's telling them that all the time. We all have an internal dialogue, or I think most people have an internal dialogue, but
I think all of us.
Yeah, I do too. There are some people that are like, they say they don't, but I think they just aren't aware.
It's suppressed, I think.
It's suppressed. I would agree. I've had clients that I've kind of worked with, like, I think you are telling yourself things, but the 1's internal dialogue, some 1s hear it as their own voice and some 1s hear it as another voice. Like they literally have this relentless internal critic telling them, that was wrong. I can't believe you did that. And it's incredibly mean and incredibly difficult to deal with. And so that 1, if you have that internal critic that is really strong, not everybody has that. And I think that's surprising to 1s the first time they realize, oh, not everybody has this voice in their head telling them they're bad all the time. They don't. And so learning how to manage that inner critic is a lot of Enneagram work for 1s. So that triad right there is what we call the instinctual triad or the body triad. Those 3 numbers together, they work with anger and justice a lot. They're wanting things to be right and good and peaceful for themselves and others in different ways.
Yeah.
And so then we move to the heart center start with the 2. So we're going around that circle, and the 2s in the heart center, their strategy is helping. So they're inserting themselves all the time with people to help them because they don't want to be rejected. So if I help you, you will love me. And they don't want to be unworthy of love. They don't want to be seen as needy themselves. So like other people are needy. Yes, let me help you. But they can't be needy. And so they always, that fear of being worthless or dispensable, like just unneeded, is really scary deep down for the 2. And their core desire is just loved and needed. They want to be wanted. And that weakness comes out a little bit. It's actually pride. They kind of run into this thing like, I know best because I can help you and I don't have my own needs. I always like to talk about the movie 27 Dresses, when she's tried on all the dresses and the reporter asks her, like, do you have needs? She's like, no, I'm Jesus. That's the 2. And so a lot of women in the South in Christian cultures sometimes think they're 2s because that is the cultural ideal and has been held up as that, but most often not. But that is like, oh, of course I'm a 2 because I want to help people. So that can trip some people up. Or some men don't think they're 2s because that feels feminine for some reason, but they're not. They are, strong helpers are super required. And so this number can get really confusing sometimes and become gendered in a way that isn't helpful.
Yeah, that's why doing the test, exactly that. Someone could think their actions, they're doing the things, but it's just cultural and that's not their real reason.
Yeah. So the 2 is always wanting to know that they're just loved and wanted. Gratitude is huge for 2s. So if you are a 2 or you love a 2, say thank you a lot and tell your closest people that you would like to be thanked. Like, because that it's so funny because it's just like being grateful is really important to twos. And so they're always, because they feel that as love and want to be needed in that way. So from the two, still in the heart center, and this can be a little confusing, is the three. And the three's strategy is achieving. They are going after it. They're going for the trophies. They're going for the gold stars. They're going for first place. They want to be the best. And their core fear is to be inefficient or worthless or incompetent or really lacking of success. However they define success. In American culture, success is, we have this big three culture in a lot of ways. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps and succeed and be the best and do that. And so threes, that kind of success, it's sometimes wealthy, it's sometimes having a high position, but whatever they view as success, that's what they want. And they're afraid of not having. And so they're really looking for admiration and status, but it's not like, it's sometimes we can be like, oh, you just want a high status, but it's really because they're afraid of not having success. So the status says, oh, okay, I've achieved, I have value. And the threes are interesting because what they do to get there is actually suppress their emotions. Like they're not super emotional people, but they read the emotions of the room all the time. And because of that, their core weakness is actually, it's deceit. Not like they're lying all the time. It's not that. It's because they're kind of buying into their own hype. And so they become, if you, ST, need me to be this direction and I talk, this type of person, and then I go to another room and that person needs to be something different, I'll be something different. That's the three. And so what they are kind of convincing themselves that they are that image, or convincing the other person that they're that image. And so they kind of embellish personas in different environments because they're wanting to be admired. And so that they'll find themselves kind of embellishing things or telling the bigger story or padding the resume in some ways. And they're incredible people because they're always reading the room. And what they really want to know is that they're really loved for just being them. They don't have to be the best. They can be inefficient. They don't have to have the high title, and they can just be loved. So that's,
I have a question for you on that.
Absolutely.
If you tell them that you just love them for who they are, but they still want to go and achieve, it's not going to make such a difference.
Well, the difference between that's kind of the behavior and the motivation. So deeply knowing that I am accepted and loved just for being me, then releases some of the pressure of achieving. They still go out and achieve. Threes are not going to become unthrees. Like they're still going to be the people who are achieving and figuring out efficiencies and doing all those things in the world. But it comes then from a place of feeling their own love, and they don't have to embellish their persona. They don't have to just fly by the seat of their pants to make it to the top. Or threes are always going to be goal driven. I mean, threes are like the vision board. Like those are threes. And they're the people who, like one of my friends who's a three, she in college bought a house and remodeled it and got in the paper for it. Like the local, like Town and Style type. Totally. I mean, she's 20 and she bought a house and remodeled it, made it super cute, and was like in the interior design section of the local paper. Yeah. That is not what she does. She became a teacher, has 3 kids, and like now as an adult, she's not an interior designer, but whatever she does, it's always like that thing.
Yeah. It's the best of the best.
Best of the best. And she's not going after it in the same way now because she's gotten really healthy. So it doesn't deeply mean that's where her worth comes from, but she's always going to achieve.
Right.
That's kind of who she is. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So when we get to the fours, so threes like put their emotions in the side and don't deal with them very well until later. Fours are like all the emotions, give them all to me. And fours' strategy is to create things. They create environments, they create spaces, they create works of art, they create stories, they're creating something all the time. And that's their personality strategy, because what they're afraid of is being inadequate or typical or insignificant. And they really fear being emotionally isolated without somebody to experience their emotions with them. And they kind of have this fear that there's something wrong with them. And so I don't want to be typical or mundane. What I really want to be is special. That word is really important to fours. Sometimes we talk about authenticity, significance, and uniqueness, but most fours, when I hear them talk, they're like, it's special. I need it to be special, that I know that I'm special, that the thing that I created created was special. That's the word that really comes up a lot. And it's their core weakness in that way is envy, this idea that other people have something I don't. They have this deep belief that everybody's got something and I'm missing it. I have this tragic flaw within me that other people have, and I'm missing this piece. And so for fours, that's where the creating comes in, like trying to discover how to be special because everybody else has all these things. And fours are so amazing. We see them often as artists and as sometimes they're counselors in some ways because they really sit so well in emotions. So it's not necessarily fours are always, the tragic artist in that way, but they're always creating something in all the different metaphysical ways, not even necessarily physical. And because they're looking to be special in the world, and they want to know just that. I see you. Like I see the specialness of who you are in this time, in this space, in this year of our Lord 2020. I see you. They want to deeply be seen for who they are right in the moment. So that for the 2, 3, 4 heart triad are always kind of trying to escape shame. They're working with this emotional angst around the concept of shame. Like the other triad was working with anger and justice. They're working with shame and identity and validation at a really deep level. Like we all want to not experience shame and we all experience anger at times, but this really deep level, that's their common struggle. And so then we move away from the heart center to the head center. And the head center starts with the 5s. And 5s also feel a little bit like the opposite of 4 because their strategy is thinking. They are researchers. They are internally processing and deeply thinking about things. And that's their way of interacting with the world. Like 8s are looking to control the world and 4s are looking to experience the world emotionally. 5s are thinking about it. And that's how they experience the world. And they're really afraid of their needs are going to be depleted. Like their internal energy resources might not be enough to think their way through something. So they would be afraid of being ignorant or not being capable, like lacking capability to think through something or not know something fully. That is the core fear. I mean, nobody wants to stand up and like feel foolish, but the 5s level is like, I don't really know it unless I have a postdoctoral degree, like then I can say that I'm an expert in this topic, like the deep level of knowledge for the 5. And they're always wanting to be capable and competent. And so whatever that looks like in their world, and they go about it through thinking often. And so they're looking for that researcher thinking. I always say that 5s speak in paragraphs. So like some of 5s talk a lot. It's unusual, but some do. But all 5s that I know, when they talk, it's either one sentence or paragraphs because they want you to have all the information. And their core weakness is this great old word called avarice. And avarice isn't just like greed. It's this feeling of I need to hoard what I have because I could lose it. It's a scarcity feeling that I don't have the internal resources to manage this world. And if people need something from me, then I'm depleted even further. So if I minimize my needs and pretend I don't have them, then I can deal with what the world needs from me. So they're always managing their internal resources. And so if for somebody who's listening, if you're the type of person who feels like when you wake up in the morning, you still don't have all the things that you need to accomplish for the day, like because somebody might need something from you, that might be an indicator that you're a 5. Like the idea of engaging and interacting with the world, not because you're depressed, not because you're sad, but that's kind of a constant state for you. Your internal resources feel small, that you might be a 5. And you have so much to offer the world, but that's how you feel. And so believing this too much interaction could lead to this catastrophic depletion of you. And so what that you want to hear is that your needs are not a problem. It's okay that you have physical needs and that you need to eat. It's okay that you need somebody to care for you. It's okay that you need more rest. And that's okay. Like they need to hear those things, that their needs kids are not a problem. And then we move from the 5 to the 6. And the 6's strategy is always preparing. They are looking at the world and what could happen. Like, what if that could happen? Okay, what else could happen? And this constant preparing in almost like worst case scenarios, and not necessarily like, oh my gosh, what if we got hit by a car? What would I do? But also, well, what if this person says this thing? And well, what if this person says this thing? And well, what if I don't have enough to get there? Or what if this could happen? It's not always just like worst case scenarios. It's a lot of what ifs. And so when we talk about the 1, we talked about that internal critic, that internal dialogue all the time. 6's often have what I call the internal committee. There's a lot of like, oh, what about this? Well, what about this? What about this? And decisions by committee are really hard.
So just what I was going to say.
They're really hard. So 6's can really struggle with that. And their core fear, some people call it fear, like just their core fear being fear, but I think a better word for it is angst. I heard an Enneagram teacher really say that, and I was like, yes, that's the 6. Because it's not anxiety, it's really angst, this deep like, oh, what if I don't have security? What if I don't have guidance? What if I get blamed because something went wrong? What if people leave me and I have been abandoned? It's like this angst down deep. And 6's are interesting because that comes out in a couple different ways. They either are, this is what the authority says, and I'm going to do what the authority says, or they're going to push against the authority and be like, can I trust you? Can I trust you? And they're going to keep pushing so they can feel really aggressive. They're not necessarily aggressive, but they can feel that way to other people. If you're thinking about somebody who's really angst ridden, like, why would you be, like it feels counterintuitive. So they can kind of go along this spectrum of being whatever the authority says is what I'm going to do because that's how I get guidance and security. And then on the other end of that spectrum is, I'm not sure if I can trust you. What if I don't get guidance and security? So I'm going to push against you. But it's always coming back to that angst. And that's what they're looking for, is support and security and guidance. And so they are predicting these bad things that could happen. And so they're kind of in a constant state of worry. And one of the things I love to help 6's do is say, write down all the things that you're worried about for 10 minutes. Let yourself worry for a specific amount of time and then come back and see what you were worried about if it happened. And if it did you handle it? And know that you can handle it. You can make good decisions, 6's. And that can be really hard for 6's because what they're really longing to hear is that you're safe and secure. And they want to hear that from other people. They also need to hear it from themselves. I can keep myself safe. I can make good decisions. So that's the 6. The last number, we've come all the way around the circle, is the 7. And the 7 strategy is planning. So they're always looking for the future and planning something to happen. And their core fear is really to be deprived or trapped, either in emotional pain or boredom. They're really afraid of missing out, and limits might mean that you could miss out. What could happen? So like the invention of FOMO was a 7. Like, I don't want before social media ever was a thing and before it became an acronym, 7s had FOMO because they don't want to miss out on anything. And that could be the fun, but also something they might like to do. It's not just about fun all the time, although 7s talk about fun a lot and they talk about joy a lot. And what happens with 7s is because they're afraid of those negative emotions and being trapped in emotional pain, they're not awesome at processing negative emotions. So they're great at the excited and happy and even a little bit nervous. And, those are fun, but pain, grief, sadness, really hard for 7s to wrap their mind around and then learn how to process in healthy ways so that they really want to be is satisfied and happy and content. And they can try to get there by planning, but that isn't the best way to get there. And so their core weakness is almost voracity. Some Enneagram teachers call it gluttony, but it's not about food. It's about this insatiable desire to fill up that fear of emptiness and being trapped with experiences, with stimulation, always trying to get to a contented state. And because of that, 7s tend to take care of themselves. Like a phrase that 7s will say, I got me, I'm good. I don't need you to take care of me. But that core longing is to know that someone will take care of you, to know that someone else really understands and you don't have to do it all on your own, is that core longing of the seven. And so sevens are often the ones who are like the French call it that joie de vivre, like this zest for life. Sevens, they're sometimes bigger than life personalities, but it's because they're always not wanting to be trapped somewhere. So if I can interact with the world and make it a joyful place, then I don't have to experience pain myself. And so that's the core longing of the seven. And so that 5, 6, 7 triad, that thinking center, their core shared experience is around the emotional struggle of fear in some way, anxiety in some way. They're afraid of something, and they're always really looking for security and safety. And they get there different ways, just like the other triads, but they're looking for some kind of security and safety in their world. And clearly the difference between, you can see 5 and 7 are going after that in different ways, but that's what they're kind of looking for. So those are type descriptions that I think are really helpful for people to go, oh, I don't know if I'm a 3 or I'm a 7, or could I be a 4 or a 5? Because I can do both of those. Like, that's usually how that conversation goes. But hopefully if you're listening and you've never heard it before, you might be like, oh wait, that's me. That's how that works.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for that, because it was really clear, really describing both the good and the bad of every challenges, struggles. Now, before we get into how it really works with couples, you want to just quickly tell us what wings are?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. So when you think of that circle again, the numbers on either side of your number are called your wings. And wings are helpful in some ways. I think they get a little too much play sometimes, but they are helpful in discerning your core type. So if you think about yourself and you have a core, like your body, your internal is your core. And then if you put your arms out like a chicken, you've got wings. And you need both wings to
butterfly.
fly.
I like butterfly.
Oh, I like butterfly. That's so much prettier. I'm going to start using that. So if you put your wings out on either side like a butterfly, you naturally gravitate to some behaviors of the wings. And it can be confusing because you're not turning into a 2 if you are a 1 and you have a 2 wing, because the idea is that you would develop both wings, because that gives you more tools and more strategies to make your way in the world in healthy ways. So some people like to say, oh, I'm a 9 wing 1 or I'm a 5 wing 6. Sometimes that can be confusing because you don't just have one wing, you have the other. And some Enneagram teachers really teach through that you have one wing that's really strong in the first half of life and one wing that is stronger in the second half of life. But the idea is that understanding how those wings impact the way you're received in the world is important. And then also how you can really just develop some other tools that are more natural to you. It's going to be hard for someone who's a 3 to start trying to reach for the 5 wing. Like, that feels so far away, but a 3 starting to help people feels much closer, and if they lean into that too. And wings are also really, really influenced by culture and your family of origin and what's acceptable around you. So I have a very large, loud Italian family that I grew up with. And so everybody was loud. I mean, there's a couple people that weren't, but they were rare in my immediate 100 people family that I grew up with. And that's not an exaggeration. But to make yourself heard and you have to push into that. So there was so much 8 energy around there. I have a really big 8 wing. Because that's what I knew, that's what was acceptable. And also noticing in the second half of life, starting to develop a 6 wing. And I think some of that comes with motherhood, and we start to worry a little more and all of that. But I need both of those to prepare and protect people, and they work that way. So your culture and your family of origin also have a lot to do with which wing is stronger for you.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, now what if anyone listening is in a relationship that has a partner that's a different number? What's the best way to go about that?
That is a fantastic question. I love that question. So it is highly likely you're in a relationship with somebody who is a different number than you. That is the majority of people's experiences. But even if you're in a relationship with somebody who is the same number, you're not the same person. You may be motivated by the same things, but you have different experiences. You might have a stronger wing or not, since we talked about wings. You are in a different state of health and unhealth throughout the day. You get new changes. You read something, you learn something. So there's always changes happening. And the best thing I would suggest for couples or relationships for people of different numbers is first to have generous self-compassion for yourself and really ruthless honesty with yourself. This is really what's motivating me, and that's okay. Like figuring out those two things, then you can really extend that generous compassion to others. So talking about the 9, and they are always trying to have those internal resources protected and internal peace and stability. And then they have this external stability they're always trying to create. If you think about that, that's exhausting. That's really a tiring mental, physical body state to be in all the time. So no wonder they want to go binge out and watch Netflix fairly often, like, and get a blanket and just calm, because this is how they're wired. And so there's so much compassion for that, rather than being like, ugh, why are you so lazy? Can't you get up and do something with the partner? I mean, I don't care who your partner is. That's not helpful. But you start to have this compassion of, oh, they're always trying to maintain peace. How can I help them see what's peaceful? How can I do this in a peaceful way? Or if you're talking to a 5 who also has that internal resource issue, but they want to know the information, how can I give them as much information as possible up front and acknowledge that that still might not be enough for them, but I can't give them any more right now? Like validating their concern and also sharing your own boundary or issue in some way. So always finding out what the core motivation is, and then seeing how you can help them with that while keeping your own, and recognizing how your own triggers play into that as well. And I often say never to use the Enneagram as a sword or a shield. So don't use it as a sword to attack somebody and be like, ah, you're just such a 3. Like that's unhelpful in any healthy relationship. And you also don't want to use it as a shield. Oh, I'm just a 3. This is just how I am, and excuse bad behavior. So when you're dealing with a relationship with somebody and the couple together, or even friendships or a friend group, a team, knowing your team dynamic, your relationship dynamic in your family means I'm going to prefer and care for you and recognize that this is what's motivating you. So for my husband, he is a 2. And so I know that when he's doing acts of service around, he is helping. And sometimes I don't necessarily need his help. But if I just said, I mean, I don't need your help right now, that would be crushing to him and really unnecessary. Like I don't need to tell him I don't need your help. I can say, thank you. I really appreciate that you want to help me. That changes the dynamic completely, because I'm recognizing his need and desire to help is more than just he thinks that I might not be able to do it on my own. So it's knowing myself and knowing the other person. And I also just, if you're out there and you're like, oh, what's the best number for me? The best number for you is to be healthy in yourself and your partner to be healthy, because any group of numbers can work together. Some are more volatile and some are a little bit easier, but they all have their strengths and liabilities when they come together.
So, but do you see any specific numbers that are more often attracted together?
There are some that are more easily attracted because it seems easy. Until they get, and then you get into the work and you're like, oh crap, there's still a lot of work to do. So know that as I'm going to say these things. So I think a lot of 7s, 9s, and 2s get together. And what's funny about this is that is also one of the triads within the Enneagram. There's lots of 3s in the Enneagram. And that triad is in their conflict coping strategy. I call them silver linings. They're always looking for what's easy, what's good. And so that group, those often come together a lot. They're fairly easy together. I think also often you'll share, couples get together that are winged. So like 3s and 4s are sometimes together, 1s and 2s are sometimes together. Like that happens a lot because they share a wing. One of the things we didn't talk about is there's also these called intuitive moves. Some Enneagram teachers call them lines and arrows. When you look at the Enneagram symbol, there's all these other lines on there. Those are the lines I'm talking about. And so if you're connected in a line in some way on the Enneagram, often there's something there that people get put together. So 5s and 7s, 3s and 9s, 1s and 7s, the 3, 6, 9, there's lots of 3, 6, 9 partnerships in there, 2s and 4s. So those kinds of things happen a lot because there's an intuitive move that we each make when we're feeling stressed or when we're insecure. And the other person is making the intuitive move sometimes in the opposite direction. And so you feel this kind of like, oh, we walk on the same path a little bit, even though we come about it in different ways, it looks a little bit different. See that often in people's.
There's like some underlining connection or values there. Connection. Now, can those numbers change?
I also love this question because it's not really up for debate, but it gets questioned all the time because I haven't ever heard in any of my training or any Enneagram teacher say that you can change your number. I've never heard it. But we also want to think, I want to change. I was that way when I was a kid, but now I'm totally past that. Well, you're probably not that number then. If you so I was listening to an Enneagram teacher a while ago and he was like, everybody wants to be a 4 right now. And they're like, and I've totally solved my envy issues. Well, you're probably not a 4 then. Because that's going to stick with you. So the main wisdom around the Enneagram is that we are born with a certain sensitivity to a certain message. And you can have the healthiest family dynamic ever, and you're still going to experience imperfect people. And so, which for you parents out there, that's just freedom. Like it's, your kids are going to live with imperfect parents. You're doing your best. It is unlikely that you are, damaging them for life. So just be free with that. But, so we're born into our family being sensitive to a certain message. And then we start to develop our personality story to make our way in the world. And so because we were already sensitive to that message, we develop our personality around that. And that's why it doesn't change. Now you can become healthier, which is always the goal of Enneagram work. And doing any kind of coaching around that is becoming healthy in your number. And there's a list of descriptions. And my favorite description of a healthy level is a social gift. Like if you're just living really healthy in your number, you're integrating all these different pieces of yourself, the shadow side and your light, and you've done work and you're self-aware, you're just a gift to the world. And so when you're healthy in your number, you can look a little bit different and you feel different than when you were struggling with that core fear all the time. But that core fear is still what's helping you be the social gift and be that person. So when you were asking the question about a 3, is a 3 still going to go out and achieve? Yeah, but they're probably going to be a lot calmer about it. And that's not going to be the thing that derails them for days if they don't achieve something. They're still going to feel it. They're still going to be a 3. And 3s can bring so much to us. They're like walking motivational posters. And when they're really healthy, they understand that sometimes it doesn't work out. And that's really helpful to know. So that's how you don't really change your number. You start to look a little bit like you have pieces of the numbers that you share lines with, but your core roots don't really change.
That makes sense. Okay. Now, when you see people, do you guess numbers?
Oh, it's so tempting. I mean, the first time you learn the Enneagram, that's what you want to do. You just want to type everybody. And I think that's common among all personality assessments. Like when you learn the DISC or when you learn StrengthsFinders or Myers-Briggs, like you want to be like, oh my gosh, you are such an INTP. Like you want to do it. It's just totally human nature. However, I found it's pretty unhelpful. So what I don't do is be like, okay, you are a 3 and I can't handle this. I don't do that. But what I do is like ask questions about what might be motivating this behavior. This behavior is unhelpful, or this doesn't seem healthy for you. If it's somebody that I don't have a relationship with, I'm not going to be like, so tell me, what's deep in your heart about that? Yeah, like I'm not going to do that. But I might be like, I think this is unhelpful for them. And I'm wondering if it's motivated by this, because you're seeing people not as a whole, you're seeing a pie piece of them. So I'm missing that part of that pie and I can't totally assume that. So rather than assume, I'm curious about it. So that posture is what I try to take with real people. Now with characters in novels or
do what you want.
All of it. It's so fun. So like I just finished watching, I'm kind of behind. I just finished watching The Morning Show, the show on Apple with Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon. And what cracked me up about it, I'm like, oh, Reese Witherspoon's character is called Bradley Jackson. And Bradley Jackson is the biggest 80th 8 that was ever an 8. And she's great. And like you see her be healthy for a moment and then you see her in this unhealth and you see her in the middle and like it's great. I'm like, you were the 80th 8 ever. And so in characters and things like that, it's kind of fun. But with real life people, I try to practice a curiosity. When I work with clients and they're discovering their number, I always tell them, I don't type you. That's not my work to do. That's your work to do, is to choose your type and know that that's who you are, because that's the discovery. Yeah. That's part of the process. Because I don't want you to be 2 years down the road and be like, oh my gosh, Jenn Whitmer did that to me. I don't want that. That's your responsibility. I can't play all the parts. And it is so much deeper when you decide, yeah, I recognize this is who I am. And you really discover yourself in that way.
For sure. Okay, one last question.
Okay.
Do you think that the 5 love languages play a role in it at all? Like certain numbers have more a specific love language over the other ones?
I have totally been exploring this idea. I haven't done any writing on it yet because I don't feel like I've explored it enough, but I have, here's my theory. This is okay, like premiere of the theory. So it's not totally fleshed out yet.
Okay, so we get to hear it first.
That's right. Right here on the Life Picks podcast. I think your love language has a lot to do with the core message that you want to hear. And that's not every type because not everybody has the same language, but I think down deep, that's what you're wanting. So most 8s that I know, one of their top love languages is acts of service or physical touch. And 8s are always trying to make their way in the world. They are intense people. They're very physical. They're the most physical on the Enneagram. And they are after justice. They want to protect and serve people. So their love language is often physical touch and acts of service. So most 7s that I know, one of their top love languages is quality time because we just want to have fun with our people. That's what we're looking for. And we want to be taken care of. And so quality time shows that I'm being taken care of. I think most 2s, 3s, and 4s, all of them in one of their top love languages is words of affirmation. They want to know that they have an identity, that they are significant in some way. This is kind of my theory that what we're looking for comes out in those love languages. And so 2s often love to give gifts and want to receive gifts. They have that gifting thing. And they're really, really good at it. So are 9s because 9s want to be seen. And so they are really looking for that. They are often good gift givers because good gift givers see people well and they want to look for that. So that's kind of my theory that I think that's how it is often related. I'm sure there's somebody out there that doesn't fit those categories, but because everybody has different life experiences. But I think, and your love languages can change over time.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm.
But I think that the theory behind this is how I give and receive love the best is still super related to that core desire within each of us. So that's how I think they're related.
It's really
interesting.
Great
question. I know. Well, I'm like, so interesting.
Well, thank you so much, Jen. It was awesome speaking to you. Guys, if you want more of Jen's awesomeness, I strongly recommend you go to jennwhitmer.com. I'm going to put all her links in the show notes so that we could connect with her and get to know more about your Enneagram number, your partners, and just understand each other so much better. Thank you so much, Jen. It was awesome speaking to you. Did you enjoy that episode? Could you do me a personal favor and subscribe and leave a review? It would mean a lot to me. Thank you so much and have an awesome day.